This is Dan Gritsko, and I am with
Private Isaiah Edwards.
and Private Edwards. What is today's date?
Well, I believe today is July 6th of 1865.
And so we are a few weeks, not that long after the surrender, and right over here is where it happened. And you said there were 3 different occasions that you had a chance to meet General Grant. And you mentioned the first 2 times you weren't very impressed. Tell me about the 3rd time you had a chance to see General Grant.
Well, it was after the fighting here on April 9th, and we just finished some of the most desperate fighting we'd seen for our entire time of the war. And we were just on top of a hillside over there. And that's when, of course, the white flags came up. And, just because we saw the white flag, it didn't mean it was over. At any given moment, that gunfire could start back up again. The killing would start back up again. And every single one of us had in our minds was, am I to die before this war is to end? That's what we were thinking of. And no one said a word. No one said anything. It was as if God that day was holding his breath, waiting to see what's going to happen. Everything was silent. Everything was still. That silence, that agonizing tension, it was soon broken by the rumble of thunder in the horizon. That thunder got closer and closer to us until it was revealed to be all these men on horseback running right towards us. And at their lead was General Grant himself. And when Grant rode past us, do you know what he did? He took off his hat. Grant took off his hat, and that was the general doing many things at once. That was the general telling us that he has been there with us the entire time. He was there from Petersburg and all the fighting between. He had been there through the mud, the blood, and the rain, and he knew what we'd been through. He understood how we were feeling, and he was asking us a favor. He was asking us to hold on, to wait, just wait a little bit longer. He can bring us the end. He can promise us an end, but what he needed from us in return, though, was our patience. So we gave the general our patience. We watched as the general and his staff as they rode right down this hill, and they came to that big brick house right there, and they went inside, and they closed that door behind them. And once that door slammed shut, it was as if the entire earth had stopped turning. Everything was silent. Everything was still. We knew what was going on. We knew what was happening in that house over there, but no one said a word about it. And I can't give you any details of the meeting that happened there. I'm only private. We're not invited to those occasions. But around 3 o'clock that afternoon, Grant and his staff, they exited the house, and with them were 2 rebel officers. One wore a fine gray uniform with a white trim beard. And I remember hearing somewhere in the distance a band that started to play Old Lang Syne. It was finally over. It was finished. And we broke down, we wept, we cried, and we thanked the good Lord above for allowing us to live to see this moment. But as soon as our celebration started, though, Grant went and gave the order for all to be ceased immediately. And I'll tell you, that frustrated us. It angered us, because we fought long and hard for this. We bled and died for this. I'd seen too many of my comrades in arms this past year be cut down battlefields for this moment. The war was over, was it not? Hadn't we earned that right to celebrate? But deep down, we knew where those orders were coming from. They weren't coming from General Grant. They weren't Grant's orders. They're coming from Lincoln. And if that's what Mr. Lincoln wanted, you're going to respect it.
Private, I really appreciate it hearing about what it was like just a few weeks ago in 1865. One final question for you. What do you think that in the future, when people will come to this site perhaps and want to remember, what do you think will be important to them to remember about what happened here since you were here?
Civility. Just how to treat one another. That's what we had to learn here at Appomattox. And going with that, a few days after the surrender here, my regiment was told to take food that was captured at Max Station a few days earlier. We would take that food down to Lee's camps, and we're feeding these men. We are feeding the very same men who days earlier would have just shot at us. And the reason why I joined this war is it was out of vengeance. My home had burned due to a rebel raid. And when I looked into the eyes of those men that day, I didn't see the eyes of the men that had been fighting this past year. I couldn't recognize the faces of the men who had burned down my home a year earlier. What I saw were boys no older than myself. Boys who had fought the same fight that I just fought. Boys who had gone through all that I had just gone through. And the only thing that separated me from those boys were the colors of our uniforms. Those boys weren't Virginians. They weren't Carolinians or Georgians. No more than I was a Pennsylvanian and a New Yorker or an Ohioan. That day we were Americans. That day we were countrymen again. And you know what? After all that we've been through, we finally started to feel those feelings of brotherhood again, of unity again. And when people come here in the future, I just like them to remember that they're all Americans here in the end.
Private, thank you very much for your time, and I hope you're able to cool off on this very warm day.
Of course.